It was 7:12 p.m., New York City. The kind of place where the waiters never smile too much and everyone pretends not to notice anything unpleasant until it's unavoidable. And now, it was unavoidable. Silence crawled over every table. A couple near the bar froze with their dessert spoons in hand. A server standing behind me dropped a tray of mocktails. I stood there, still, belly round under my fitted black dress, one hand resting just above it. Not for balance, not for show, but out of instinct. Because some part of me wasn't shocked at the violence, but I was shocked at the words that came next. She leaned in, voice low but sharp enough to cut. "Go to public care, ma'am. We don't need your kind upsetting our guests." My heart didn't race, it slowed. The sting on my cheek faded quickly. But her words, those would take longer to leave. Because this wasn't about a seat, or a dress code, or a misplaced reservation. This was about something much older. Something every black woman in America has been forced to carry quietly until someone demands she drops it right in front of a crowd. If you've ever felt how racism hides in plain sight, even where the plates cost more than your groceries, subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ and tell us in the comments what country you're watching from. This story, it matters. That night, I had come to celebrate the baby I wasn't supposed to carry this far. I had come to order the risotto and leave quietly. I had come to feel like I belonged in a space I legally owned part of. Instead, I was told I wasn't welcome. She had no idea who I was, but she was about to find out. And when she did, her whole world paused, just like mine had. Only this time, I wouldn't be the one left standing in silence. They think success makes you safe. That once you wear the right heels, speak the right way, or carry the right last name on a building lease, you're immune. But that slap reminded me, you can't dress your way out of being black in America. I grew up in Detroit, not the part they show on city guides. We had nights when the lights cut out halfway through dinner, and my mom would light candles like it was a game. Truth is, we hadn't paid that bill in weeks. Sometimes dinner was whatever was left in the pantry, instant grits, maybe half a banana split between 3 kids. My mom worked 2 jobs. She was a nurse by day and cleaned offices by night. Never once complained, but her eyes always looked tired. She taught me what it meant to work twice as hard, not because she wanted me to, because she knew I'd have to. And I did. I got my first job at 14, folding clothes in a department store where I wasn't allowed to use the front staff break room. I got used to the stairs, got used to locking my purse in the stock room, just in case someone decided I looked suspicious. Even then, I kept my head down and studied. Scholarships, late nights, a full ride to Michigan, then Harvard Business School, pregnant at 29, alone, and determined to build something that couldn't be snatched away. Call to Organics started from my apartment kitchen. I was mixing belly butters with shea and avocado oil to soothe the stretch marks that made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. A friend tried it, then her sister, then a boutique reached out. Today, it's a multi-million-dollar brand. We ship internationally. We supply major hotel chains. And that restaurant? It sits inside a commercial block I partially own through my real estate holdings company. But none of that was written on my face last night. To the manager, I was just a black woman, standing alone in a tailored maternity dress, without a man, without a business card, without a sign that screamed owner. And that's all she needed to decide I didn't belong. I didn't always dress like a CEO. But even now that I do, it doesn't always matter, because some people don't care how far you've come. They only see where you started, or rather, what they think you were born to be. That night I was reminded, to them, I'm still just another ma'am that doesn't belong in the room. But I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was my name. I wasn't there for a photo shoot, no press, no board members, no PR team, just me and my baby. Quiet joy, the kind that feels rare when you've spent months terrified you might never make it to week 24. The scan that morning had shown a strong heartbeat. After 3 back-to-back hospitalizations, I could finally breathe. The high-risk specialist smiled, touched my arm gently, and said, "This is a good day. Celebrate it." So I did. My assistant, Jamie, had made the reservation 2 days earlier. It was one of those places that made headlines for its $50 truffle fries and marble-tiled bathrooms. Jamie said she used her own name to keep things low-key since mine tends to trigger extra attention, good and bad. I arrived 10 minutes early. Alone. The host stand was manned by a tall brunette with glassy eyes and a phone pressed to one ear. She didn't even look up when I approached. I waited and waited. Then a voice from behind sliced through the air like a cold gust. "Are you lost?" I turned. A middle-aged white woman in a tight black blazer stood there, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. No greeting. No welcome. Just accusation, wrapped in faux politeness. "No," I said. "Reservation for Jamie Moore." She looked me up and down. I wasn't in heels, just low black flats. My hair was in a twist bun, minimal makeup, a soft cashmere wrap draped over my belly. Her eyes paused at my bump. "Oh," she said slowly, lips tightening. "Deliveries through the side entrance." My jaw locked, but my tone stayed even. "I'm not delivering anything. I'm here to dine." She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned to glance around me, like someone might pop out and explain the mix-up. Then she muttered it. "Bathrooms are that way, sweetie." I stared at her. She blinked, then turned to the hostess and whispered something in her ear. The girl looked startled. "Ma'am, do you even have a reservation?" Before I could answer, the woman stepped forward, fast, and grabbed my forearm. Not roughly, but with the entitlement of someone who believes you don't have the right to object. That's when I spoke, calm and clear. "Take your hand off me." She froze. Maybe it was my voice. Maybe it was the other diners starting to look. Or maybe she realized she just touched someone she didn't fully understand. She let go. But the damage had already started. The evening I came to celebrate new life had just turned into something else entirely. And the manager, Linda, had no clue she'd just reached for the wrist of the woman who held the future of her job in her hands. The moment she let go of my arm, her face shifted. Not with guilt, but with irritation. Like I'd inconvenienced her by standing my ground. She smoothed her blazer, forced a thin smile, and said louder this time, "We've had issues with walk-ins lately. We try to keep things upscale." The message wasn't subtle. "I have a reservation," I repeated, slower now. "Jamie Moore, table for one." She turned to the hostess, who was still frozen with discomfort. "Check the list again." Seconds ticked by. The hostess hesitated, glanced at her screen, then nodded. "It's here, 7 p.m., private booth." Linda scoffed. "That can't be right." Then, and I'll never forget this, she looked me straight in the eye, tilted her head, and said, "Are you even really pregnant?" The words hung there. Not just rude, dangerous. Women like her never say these things to protect a business. They say them to protect a world they believe should only belong to them. I stayed silent, but the fire behind my ribs flared. She wasn't finished. "I've seen this before," she muttered. "Someone pretending to be pregnant for sympathy, trying to get special treatment, trying to distract when they don't belong somewhere." The couple nearby gasped. Someone's fork clinked on a plate. I opened my clutch to show her the email confirmation. She didn't even glance down. Instead, she waved over a waiter. "Get security," she said flatly. "I believe this woman is trespassing and disturbing the peace." The waiter hesitated, eyes darting between us. "Miss Linda." I said, "Get them." He scurried off. I could feel every eye on me now. Not because of what I'd done, but because of what she'd accused me of being. A problem. I folded the email back into my purse, took a breath. My pulse didn't spike, my voice didn't rise, but I looked her in the eyes and said, "You are making a mistake." That's when she snapped. Maybe she felt the room slipping away. Maybe it was the calm in my voice, the calm she couldn't rattle. But out of nowhere, she stepped forward and slapped me. Open palm, full force, right across the face. The entire room froze. It wasn't just the sound, it was the audacity. There was a pause, long and heavy, no music, no footsteps, just silence thick enough to press against your skin. She stood there, chest heaving, lips tight, like she was waiting for applause. I didn't touch my cheek. I didn't flinch. I just looked her in the eyes and smiled. Because now, she just handed me everything I needed. And she had no clue the woman she just struck had the power to turn this restaurant upside down with one phone call. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Not the waitstaff, not the couple beside me clutching their wine glasses, not the hostess who still had the reservation screen pulled up, blinking. Linda's hand lingered midair like she couldn't quite believe what she'd done. Or maybe she had, and thought she'd get away with it. I didn't raise my voice, didn't reach for the bruise blooming on my cheek, didn't flinch. I straightened my wrap, looked around slowly at the tables, watching it unfold like theater. And then I asked one question. "Do you know who owns this building?" That's when her face changed. Not confused, terrified. Because she just remembered, this wasn't just some restaurant. It was inside the Lavelle, a luxury property on 62nd. 10 floors, commercial below, residences above. Prime real estate. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I didn't give her time to lie. "I do." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" I took a small card from my purse and slid it onto the host stand. It wasn't a business card, it was a property access badge. My name, my company, and the logo of the real estate trust that held a majority stake in the block. Calda Holdings, an offshoot I'd formed for acquisitions like this one. I spoke gently, not for her but for everyone listening. Calda Holdings owns 51% of this building's commercial portfolio, which includes this space. Now the air wasn't just still, it was charged. The waiter who'd been sent to call security stopped in his tracks. Linda took a shaky step back. "I didn't know," she started. Of course she didn't. She didn't ask, didn't wonder, didn't pause long enough to consider I might be more than what she saw standing in front of her. And now, she was scrambling to piece it back together. I thought maybe you were with catering, or you thought I didn't belong here," I said flatly. "And you made that clear from the moment I walked in." She turned to the staff, pleading now. She never said who she was. There was no indication. Someone in the back muttered, "Doesn't give you the right to slap a guest." Another voice, "She had a reservation." Another, "We all saw it." Linda's face had drained of color. Because now she wasn't standing in front of a problem. She was standing in front of the landlord, and all her excuses had just collapsed under the weight of one sentence. Have you ever seen someone mistreated and then realized they had power all along? Subscribe to Echoes of Hope. Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And yes, Linda, you should have asked who I was. Now, it's too late. Linda opened her mouth to say something, maybe an apology, maybe another excuse, but her voice was drowned out by a faint, unmistakable sound, a phone camera shutter. It came from the corner, near the coat check. The hostess, maybe 19, maybe 20, lowered her phone slowly, hands trembling. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I recorded everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Eyes wide, scared, but steady. Someone gasped. Another diner applauded under their breath. Linda's neck turned red. I looked at the girl. Her name tag read Marisol. I gave her the smallest nod. She nodded back. By the time Linda spun around to scold her, half the restaurant already had their phones out. Some were filming, others were typing furiously. It was too late to rewrite the narrative, too late to pivot, too late to smile and pretend this was all a misunderstanding. Because the footage, all 7 minutes of it, had just hit social media. 10 minutes later, Slap the Wrong CEO was climbing trends. And then the doors opened. Jamie walked in first, holding her phone to her ear, scanning the room like she already knew what she was walking into. Behind her came my bodyguard Malik, calm, tall, unreadable, and close behind, my legal counsel, Amara, carrying a slim leather binder. Jamie's eyes landed on me. "You okay?" I nodded once. She turned to the manager. "Name?" Linda stammered. I'm not talking to you," Jamie snapped, pulling out her phone. "We'll be requesting footage from the restaurant's internal system. But for now," she looked at Marisol, "you're the one who filmed." "Yes." Jamie reached into her coat and handed her a card. "Send it here." Linda took a step forward. "This is all a misunderstanding." "No, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen," Amara interrupted smoothly, flipping open the binder. She continued without looking up. "Unlawful physical contact, public defamation, denial of service based on racial bias, property interest conflict." Linda's mouth dropped open. You came here looking for a fight," she whispered. "No," I finally said. "I came here to eat." The restaurant had gone silent again, but this time, not from disbelief, from anticipation. They were watching history unravel, and this time it wasn't being swept under the rug, because one teenage girl didn't look away. And this time, the receipts were rolling. Jamie didn't waste time. She pressed one button on her phone, lifted it to her ear, and said just 2 words, "Shut it." That's all it took. No dramatic speeches, no threats, because when you hold the paperwork, you don't need to yell. Linda watched, frozen, as Jamie turned to the hostess stand and quietly asked for the restaurant's general manager. "He's not on site tonight," the hostess replied nervously. "He's at the Midtown location." Jamie nodded, unfazed. "Then this will go through the building portfolio manager. She'll get the call in 30 seconds. Linda finally broke the silence. I didn't know who she was. You can't punish someone for not recognizing. But you didn't need to know who she was. Amara cut in, eyes locked on her like a laser. You just needed to treat her like a human being. A silence heavier than the last fell. No one stepped forward to defend Linda now. Not a single coworker. Not a single customer. Then my phone buzzed. Text message from Karen Willis, portfolio director of Lavelle Properties. Reviewed footage, terminating lease discussion with restaurant parent company. You have board-level authority to proceed. I handed the phone to Amara. She read it, nodded, then turned to Linda. Effective immediately, your tenancy is under review. The footage, witness statements, and the violation of the building's non-discrimination clause will be forwarded to legal. We'll give you 30 days, if not less. Linda looked like the floor might open beneath her. She turned to the room, but the room had already decided. That's when Malik stepped forward, not to threaten, but to escort. Do you want her to be removed? He asked me quietly, gesturing toward Linda. I shook my head. I don't need her removed, I said calmly. She's already erased herself. Linda stood there a few seconds longer, waiting for someone to fix it. But nothing came. She grabbed her coat from behind the counter and walked out the front door, not even glancing back. By the time it shut behind her, news sites were already picking up the story. The video had passed 300,000 views, and I hadn't even posted a single word. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice in the right moment. One camera that doesn't blink. One phone call with the weight of decades behind it. She thought she'd slap a stranger and go back to business. She didn't realize she tried to humiliate the woman who signs the contracts her business depends on. And now, the whole city would know it. Before we unveil more deeper truths, subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ and tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. By sunrise, they were already backpedaling. The restaurant's corporate Instagram page posted a blurry statement with gray font over a beige background, the kind of apology that feels more like a shrug. It said something about an unfortunate misunderstanding and company values rooted in inclusion. But people weren't buying it, because the video said everything. Marisol's footage had gone viral. You couldn't scroll through a feed without hearing the slap, watching the stare down, and seeing the moment Linda realized she'd just slapped the wrong woman. And the caption? It became legend. Slapped the wrong CEO. Twitter exploded. TikTok ran wild. My name trended with it, not because I posted anything, but because people were sharing their own stories beneath mine. Stories about the time they were followed in stores, denied entry to hotels, told, "This section's reserved." The clip became a rallying cry. Even people who'd never heard of Called Organics were now calling for boycotts. By noon, Yelp and Google were flooded with one-star reviews. Some were from people who had never been to the restaurant but didn't need to. Others were from people who had and had stories of their own. Manager made my wife wait 15 minutes while seating white couples ahead. Told us our baby's crying wasn't appropriate for their ambience. Asked me to see my room key even though I was in full uniform. I was the chef. Turns out, Linda had a history, but it wasn't caught on camera until now. By the time their PR firm realized how deep the damage was, it was past saving. Shareholders from the parent company sent internal memos demanding immediate restructuring. A journalist called Jamie, asking for an official quote. She responded with just one sentence. Calda Holdings does not tolerate hate, and neither should anyone else. The statement was picked up by Bloomberg, then CNN, then a dozen other outlets. That afternoon, the CEO of the restaurant group, a man who had once tried to pitch me a joint menu deal, called my office 6 times. He never got a call back, because this wasn't just personal anymore. It was systemic. This wasn't about a slap. It was about the audacity, the belief that someone like me couldn't possibly belong. That belief cost them millions in damages, a lease in a flagship building, and their reputation in the city's culinary scene. Linda, she tried to post a vague apology online. The comments were brutal. You didn't even say her name. Sorry you got caught. This is why people record everything now. But she still hadn't learned. Because this wasn't about bad PR. This was about power. And when you treat black women like we're invisible, don't be surprised when the world watches you disappear instead. I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted a quiet night, one meal, one celebration of a life still growing inside me. But symbols don't ask to be made. They're carved out of moments like this, when silence is no longer an option. After the footage spread, reporters began using words like scandal, incident, outrage, but those words don't capture what actually happened. Because this wasn't new, it was just finally visible. The truth is, black professionals walk into luxury spaces every day and carry the weight of being questioned. Questioned for being alone, for not wearing a name tag, for ordering the wine without pointing at the menu. There's even data on it, but no one wants to talk about that at a 5-star brunch. A 2023 Harvard study showed that black patrons in high-end hospitality environments were 35% more likely to experience what researchers called soft exclusion. Not denied service directly, just treated like background noise until they disappear. We're called miss when others are called ma'am. We're told that table's reserved, even when it's not. And we're asked over and over again, "Can I help you?" But it's not a question, it's a warning. I've been living in that quiet, constant interrogation for years. But that night, that slap, it made something shift. So I did what I do best. I built something. Within 2 weeks, I restructured Calda Holdings' lease model. We launched an initiative called Open Table Equity, offering reduced-rate leases to first-time black restaurateurs in prime commercial zones. Not in the outskirts, not in the forgotten corners of town, right in the heart of the city, where their presence wouldn't be questioned, it would be expected. We partnered with financial literacy programs, matched each leaseholder with a business coach, built a grant fund seeded from the legal settlement we negotiated from the restaurant group that tried to sweep it all under the rug. I didn't host a press conference, didn't start with a billboard or a hashtag. I started with a lease, and then another, and another. Because racism in these spaces doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers from behind velvet ropes. Sometimes it walks you to the wrong table. Sometimes it slaps you and waits to see if you'll slap back. But I didn't need to raise my hand. My calm became a blueprint. My silence turned into equity, and my presence became policy. Now, when someone says, "Do you know who owns this building?" maybe the answer will be someone who remembers what it's like to be watched, doubted, because racism costs more than PR. It costs opportunity. And I'm here to make sure it costs them just as much as it's cost us. That night, as I sat in the back of the town car with my head leaned gently against the window, I felt it. A flutter, then a firm, steady kick just below my ribs. My baby hadn't moved all day, but in that moment, it was like they were reminding me, I'm still here, and so are you. I placed my hand over the spot and closed my eyes. The world would talk about the slap, the lawsuit, the hashtag, but I'll remember that night as the moment I stopped shrinking. I kept thinking about something my grandmother used to say, back when I was a child in Detroit watching her press her Sunday dresses with an iron that hissed like it had something to prove. You don't always have to fight with your fists. Sometimes, your name is enough. She didn't mean a surname, she meant your name. Your presence, your truth, your refusal to back down just to keep others comfortable. Weeks later, I walked past the same sidewalk where I had once been humiliated. This time, the windows had new decals. The awnings were different. Inside, the laughter was louder. The staff looked proud. And the new owner, a young black woman from the Bronx, smiled when she saw me and said, "You're the reason I'm here." I didn't stay long, just long enough to see it. The space they tried to push me out of now belonged to someone who looked like me. And in the quiet that followed, I felt one more soft kick. This time, not just a reminder, but a promise. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ. Real stories, real people, real power.